Hey, everybody, and welcome to our third episode in the month of self care for October. Today is October 17th, and our topic for the day is Spark of Awakening. It's all about spiritual self care today. I am Aditi Nirvan, bringing you webinars that inspire. I am a transformational mentor, a therapist, an artist, and an entrepreneur. And today is also a very important day for a lot of Indians. It is the beginning of Navratri. This is the kick-starting of the festivities for the last quarter of the year. So we're going to be having a lot of fun this year because we're going to wait and see how things show up differently due to the pandemic. And but like all festivals in India, it is all in our heart. It's also a great time to call upon our own connection to spirit because eventually everything that is there in all these festivals that we have connects deeply at a spiritual level. It all comes from there. It's just that the interpretations have become more adaptable to human conditions, and we tend to humanize everything. So, for example, today, we start praying to Durga, and Durga is more an energy. Well, that's just my point of view, and I let's see how the next 9 days go for everybody. But meanwhile, today we will start with spiritual self care. And all of you that are there on right now, welcome to those watching in the future. Welcome to you guys too. And I hope that you take today's webinar from a very simple perspective, not making anything very complicated, because to do. I'm trying to remove labels and take things out of slots and unstructure and unslot as far as possible. Um, yeah, that's really it. So, topics like spirituality, spiritualism, awakening, enlightenment, the path, the pathless path, light, source, all of these have been all tangled up as terms and terminology in the spiritual world in that sense for years, centuries now. And then there are the seekers, there are followers, then there are the so called spiritual ones, people who find it very important to appear spiritual. They consider themselves very spiritual. And spiritual doesn't necessarily mean pious or sacred, but they need other people to know that they are on a certain path. Like, for example, they would wear certain kind of clothing attire, they would have certain kinds of foods, they would do their regular yoga practice, they would do chanting, they would probably wear some kind of crystals, and malas and beads, and you guys have probably seen a lot of those kinds of people, and they will make regular appearances at satsangs. So there is this whole band of people that need to show their spirituality, or what I call people who wear their spirituality or their path on their sleeve, and they make it very obvious to everybody. Then there are those that are true seekers, who you don't know how many years I've actually spent on this. So there are all kinds of people. Now, what I don't want to talk about those people. I'm only defining them at the start of this webinar, simply because what I'm going to talk about today has got nothing to do with these people. Spiritual self care is not spirituality. Spirituality is your own definition of it. There is no definition for it really in that sense. It is your own interpretation of it. But spiritual self care is something that we do at a very, very basic level. Like, for example, in hygiene self care, you would regularly brush your teeth, you would have a bath, you would make sure that you wash your butt after you've done your job, and all of that. So, all of that comes under the basic hygiene self care. So, in the same way, spiritual self care is very, very basic. It is not something that is meant to be slotted, boxed, and labeled and sold, like a lot of spirituality is. And the reason why I want to create this difference is that you could be a seeker, you couldn't be a seeker, it really doesn't matter. This is the basic stuff that you really ought to be doing. It comes completely free, and it's there and available for everybody. Whatever your mojo in spirituality or spiritualism or whatever it may be, this basic level of self care needs to be in place uh, first, in order for you to then even call yourself spiritual, or call yourself a seeker, or call yourself whatever it is that you call yourself. And then all of that really doesn't make any difference in that sense. A lot of people become all too serious as far as their spiritual path is concerned, to a point where they would even probably defend their teaching or the path that they are following, or defend one guru versus another guru's teachings, and so called all of that, right? You guys get the energy. I really don't want to get too much into it, but the same egoic structures that we have in what I call the real world versus the spiritual world, just for a point of reference for this webinar, that the same egoic structures that we tend to have in the real world, and that causes divide over there, we take that and we project it into the so-called spiritual world. We take all of that crap and unresolved stuff that we have in the real world, and we post it onto the spiritual path. For example, if you have dysfunctional relationships in the real world, you will take those and you will project it onto the guru, and your relationship with your guru or your teacher, whether they are in a body or without a body. Unresolved issues that are in the real world get projected onto the spiritual world. The need to show who you are in the real world becomes the need to show that you're spiritual in this world. So if you find that you are the same person in both the worlds, and that stuff around in yourself is not getting resolved, that is not spiritual self care. That is still being in the egoic structure, that is still being someone who wants to remain unresolved and with all their barriers up, not being able to receive anything, not being able to flow, still being in a structure. Now, my idea here is that if you don't recognize this early on, um, you may have spent 25 years meditating or being mindful or being spiritual or whatever it is, but you've not moved an inch. That's my idea. Uh, Evolving doesn't involve showing how much you've evolved. Okay, I'm trying to find the words for the energy of what I'm trying to say, simply because it's a little difficult to define in words what this is. So, say you've been meditating for 20 years or 25 years or whatever it is, yeah, and you are still battling the exact same issues that you did for all of these years. That means you haven't moved an inch. How do you know that you've moved inches? How do you know that you've moved miles? You know it because you can't relate to who you were 20 years ago. You'll actually not even be able to relate who you were maybe a year ago. You will understand that you were the way you were then, and you will get that you did the best that you could with that, what you had at that time. But you can't have that essence anymore. You're just not that person anymore. It feels like a different person, and or it feels like a different lifetime for you. You become that unrelated to it. That is when you know you've moved miles. That is when you know the real spiritual self care has happened. And spiritual self care isn't like any other self care. Trust me, we will get more into what it looks like and how it can be for you, but it isn't anything like a lot of people feel it is. So, look, this webinar is going to be a little weird and out there, but we have to do this, or rather, I have to do it. And you guys who have chosen to watch this and be on this webinar with me are the weird, crazy ones. And, thank you for being a part of that crazy club. So, getting back to it, if you know that you can't relate to who you were maybe even a year ago or 6 months ago, that's when you know within you that you have moved inches or miles. And then there, perhaps you may dress like a person who's spiritual or not. It really doesn't matter. It You don't have to take it into account. Okay. Um, for me as well, for years, I genuinely thought that. So this was my this was my, what do you call, my, not my innocence, but my me being naive about it, me not being experienced enough for it, was that I literally felt like the sun would shine out of my butt with awakening and moments of awakening and enlightenment and nirvana and all of that stuff. But when I had to do a reality check with my life, I I completely failed at even processing the simplest of emotions. Half the time I spent in rejecting who I was, half the time I spent in rejecting what I felt. For me, there were the good emotions and the bad emotions. So, as a seeker, or as a person who's meditating, or as a person who's supposed to be mindful, I'm not supposed to get angry. And it was not taught to me, but it is a fallacy that a lot of people in this path experience, that anger is not good, anger is bad, or it's not good to be violent. And there are a lot of these kind of definitions. But what happens is, when you adhere to those kind of definitions, and I'm not saying you should be that kind of a person, but if you adhere to these kind of definitions, it actually never lets you evolve. Because what you're doing in that moment is you're doing spiritual judgment, which is like the final bastion of, or the final line uh, that you should be crossing when you're moving on to being more mindful. Um, your priority is self care. Your number one priority is self care before anything else, before you are trying to be spiritual, or you're trying to be successful, or anything else for that matter. Your first job in being alive in this body is self care. And I can't keep reiterating enough, which is why I have so many of these webinars this month, because there are thousands of perspectives on this. And if you can't find the place to forgive you, you can't find the place to embrace every single part of you wholeheartedly, like really being wholehearted, knowing that, hey, you know what, I tend to be angry and I tend to get angry, or no, right now I have a wound, and if I am speaking to you angrily, or from a space of upset, or I'm poking you where it hurts and I'm triggering you because it's coming from my wound right now, and I have an unhealed wound right now, and it's very open, it's very raw, and I'm feeling like salt is being rubbed into it. And that is spiritual self care. Why is that spiritual self care? Because it is a complete acknowledgement of exactly what is, without any kind of a cover up, without any kind of weird delusions about who you are or who you should be, or any ideas of perfection. It's really about just simple acknowledgement of exactly what is. So, like I gave you the example last time that it's raining, and then, oh, why is it raining? It shouldn't rain, it'll get mucky, da da da. The other one is, it's raining. Yes, it is. The second one is where we want to go, that this is what it is. And that is self care. Why? Because it removes any kind of self passion that you may be doing. All of the energy that you're then going to use in trying to perfect it, correct it, change it, fix it, all of that energy is going to drain you out. It's going to create anxiety. It's going to create panic attacks and fear and all sorts of crap within you. And that doesn't sound like self care to me. That sounds like self abuse. So, self care is complete and total honesty with yourself. And if you can do that while you're on this path, I would say that you're going to be moving miles very, very soon. Um, so, spiritual self care is something that most of the world doesn't pay attention to. We are too busy being spiritual than doing spiritual self care. And what happens is, over a period of time, it starts to become a crisis of humanity, and therefore a crisis of consciousness. Spiritual self care is knowing that you fully exist first before you start to go beyond it. We keep asking this question, who am I? I am not this name, I am not this body. No, but hang on a second. Right now, I don't feel like I'm not this body. I do feel like this body is me, and I'm going to acknowledge that. And that's the difference. If you try to move faster and speedier beyond your real evolution, that's when you start becoming delusional. And that is known as spiritual bypassing. And we will get to that, because that's a massive disease, illness, whatever you want to call it, that millions of people all over the world have it. So don't be in a hurry to transcend, or don't be in a hurry to rise above, or take the middle path, or the road less traveled, or achieve nirvana if you are not ready for it. check to see what feels real for you in this moment, and know that this could be a place where I could get to. I would love to be there, but I'm not yet there. Yeah. And what will it take for me to change that or have that, and then let it go? Just let it go. It's like you ask that question, you invite that possibility into your life, but you're not in active pursuit of it by leaving everything else and making that one thing, your major thing. Like, I know a lot of people for whom attaining enlightenment, nirvana, awakening, all of that, so, oh, number one priority, and therefore all choices in their life get measured up against it. Is this person spiritual enough? So let's be with them. Is this clothing spiritual enough? Does it show that I'm spiritual? You know, that's not spiritual self-care. That's spiritual delusion. That's spiritual bypassing. Okay. Do not put the awakening cart before the proverbial horse, because it will only worsen and exacerbate the unresolved issues that you have within you. Spiritual self care is a full acknowledgement and an acceptance of what is real and true for you right now. Right now, knowing fully well in the next moment you could so change. Why? Because that's how your mind is. It changes political parties worse than the political parties in our country. It is so quick in turning things around. You give your mind enough proof that something else is real, and it'll start believing it when 10 minutes ago it didn't. And that's how it is. Okay. You know fully well that your mind is susceptible to change, and if it finds enough proof that you genuinely are beyond the body, then go for it, then believe it. But don't believe it until you actually get there from within. Keep checking within. Where are you really? And don't be competitive. Just because 10 people in your workshop, class, satsang, etc., have achieved nirvana, you haven't, and that makes you less. That's not spiritual care, self-care. That's you getting into competition and really creating some serious levels of damage to your psyche, because you'll walk around feeling less than. And if you're feeling less than in the spiritual world, you're definitely feeling less than in the real world. And like I said earlier, you will carry your unresolved issues there and start to plant it onto that world. So be very, very aware of this, guys. Okay. Spiritual self care is acknowledging again and accepting totally what is real and true for you right now. It is total and brutal honesty with you. There is no hiding, there is no gliding over, there is no carpet to sweep anything under and appear or be delusioned about who you are. There is no wanting to look spiritual when you actually want to scream and cry and throw a vase at somebody. So please get yourself off the hook, and be exactly who you are. Yeah. With the good, the bad, the ugly of you. Anything other than this is self abuse, or spiritual self abuse. So you want to acknowledge who you are fully. Why? Because then only there is any kind of a chance of changing anything. Otherwise, there isn't. Yeah. Um, to embrace who you are with no judgment. If you can do that, even for a minute a day, a minute a day, like, so you can imagine at what rate we judge ourselves. Okay. All I'm asking you is to create a space of 1 minute a day where you're not judging you. And then try to aim for more number of those minutes a day. You will connect to that spark of awakening within you. Because what happens is when you're not busy judging yourself anymore, uh, you actually become an undefined open space to see deeper layers of you where you didn't earlier because you were too busy judging. So judgment is like taking how do I put it? Taking some, maybe a colored screen, or looking through certain kind of glasses, or putting up a wall and blocking. And it's actually like having something opaque in front of your eyes, where on that wall, opaque wall, is written, angry, a sad, a lonely person, all of that is written. And those are the judgments that you're seeing. Beyond that opaqueness, beyond that wall that you've called yourself, there lies this open space of who you are as a person, where there's a possibility that you are like these million other qualities too, but you just can't see because you've got this thing right in front of your eyes. So it's about taking that away for a moment, and suddenly the seeing shifts to something bigger. It's different. Try it. I honestly, it's difficult for me to describe in words. It's something that you're going to have to experience. And we as seekers or as spiritual people or whatever you want to call ourselves, we tend to find, oh, we have to be compassionate, we have to be kind. Yes, it's nice to be all of that, but it's also good to be real. Um, you cannot know and you cannot spread compassion and kindness in the world if you've not given it to you and you've not experienced what real and true compassion and kindness is with yourself first. You will not know what it is. It's very nice to drop these words around, and it's very nice to have acts of compassion and acts of kindness. It's good to do that, and it feels great to have done that for others with no agenda. I do agree with that. But if you're not doing it as a part of your self care, what you're doing is still at a surface level, and it is still momentary, and it is not going to remain as a part of your being. It is a quality you will embody for a moment of time while you're doing that act for others. But when you're by yourself, you're still abusing you. Do you get that? So please understand that to have those qualities being spread out in the world, embrace it for you first. Start to become the embodiment of compassion and kindness. When you start, strangely, when you start actually doing that, you will not need to do acts of kindness and compassion, because kindness and compassion will become who you are. It will automatically translate to everything that you say and do. And in a moment, even you whacking somebody would probably be kindness for them, because they are probably crossing boundaries with you. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. This is about it being as real as you can. um, Another thing about spiritual self care is that we keep taking everything way too seriously. If you start to do that, you are going to be fitting in with the rest of the world because you've been taught to be serious. It is expected out of you to be serious, and you will never start to lighten up. There is this thing where sometimes you get so badly screwed by life, and you have cried so many times and you've fallen apart and broken so many times that you can't do it anymore. You're just you're just tired of doing it. And what escapes from your mouth in that moment when things go down again is laughter at the ridiculousness of what a crazy sense of humor the universe has, and that it's playing a joke on you once again. It may seem like you've lost it, but the only thing you've lost in that moment is the seriousness. You should have been laughing a long time ago. um, Lightness and taking things lightly, rolling with the punches, so called, is your natural state. That's who you were as a kid. And you forgot to be that way because while you were having fun and while you were playing and you were enjoying life, your parents or whoever it is that raised you told you that life is serious, that now you need to get serious. Now you are 10 years old. Now you are a teenager. Now you're in your 20s. Now in your 30s. Get serious. So at every decade, they threw something at you to be responsible for and to be serious about, because they felt that if you laughed too much and you had too much fun, you wouldn't probably do what you're supposed to be doing. And then you wouldn't have the money to sustain, and then you wouldn't do self care. But the funny part is, you forgot self care in the middle of the pursuit of all of this. So, my point really here is that you can't heal if you don't know how to laugh at your own situation. Uh, so, I want to give you a strange example over here. When I was getting divorced in 2017, my ex husband and I, we had a great marriage. We were fantastic friends. He is so called spiritual. He has been meditating since he was, I think, 7 years old. And he must have done 20, 25 Vipassana camps. His mother was a Vipassana teacher. His brother is a guru. So they come from a very spiritual family, right? So for us, meditating and having a peaceful house and all of that it was a regular affair. I was the wild one. I was the crazy one. I was the outspoken one. And I did rattle quite a few people, but I don't really ever care about that. Um, when he and I were getting divorced, we were at the court, and our lawyer, who we had one lawyer between us because it was all amicable, um, she had met us, I think, three times till then. And the fourth time, where we were supposed to present our case to the judge, uh, and we had filed 6 months before, we were standing at the entrance of the judge's chambers, and there were a lot of people going in and coming out, and we were finding something to laugh about as usual, him and me, and we were always great friends, and we were cackling up. Like, we were laughing. At one point, I remember I laughed quite loudly, and a lot of people went quiet because there must have been at least 50, 60 people in that room. And then I was like, okay, I'm not supposed to be laughing over here. This looks very strange because everybody else is fighting, everybody else. And I found it so amusing. I just couldn't stop giggling. And he kept telling me, he's like, you're really loud right now. You calm down. I couldn't. It was so many things were funny about that place. The judge is so serious, the lawyers are so serious, people are so serious. And I was like, it's only a divorce. What's the big deal? And then the lawyer looked at us and she said, you both, you can't be like this. So I was like, what do you mean? She's like, don't go inside and start laughing. I said, why? She said, the judge will throw your case out. I was like, why would they do that? It's my case, it's my life, it's my marriage, it's my divorce. She's like, no, they don't see it that way. You look too happy to be divorced. And at that time it struck me. And I said okay to her because I wanted this to get done with. I think at that moment I realized that I had completely lost it. And I kept my mouth shut. I said, I'm going to do one thing. If I open my mouth, I'm going to laugh. So I think I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And I told my ex husband, you take over answering whatever it is because I don't think I can control myself. It's just too funny. So yeah, I had got the giggles, and it was highly inappropriate. It was completely crazy. But to me, it was funny. It was funny not because it was a coping mechanism from me. It was funny because everything that could be damaged due to the separation and the divorce was already done. He had left me for another woman, and that was fine. Okay. I even met the woman, I liked her, everything was fine. Internally, there was a turmoil, there was a war. I sorted that war out. When I became completely at peace with every possible outcome of it, I had nothing left to do but laugh. And I laughed. And it was inappropriate. And I was fine with it. And that's what my point is, that nothing bothers you anymore that much when you learn to laugh at your own wounds. And it doesn't mean that your wounds are not healing, but laughter is a part of the healing process. Lightness and seeing the situation from a third person's eyes, your own situation from a third person's eyes, is a part of the healing process. Looking at yourself from a third person's point of view as to how I'm coping with this. What's really going on inside of me? What am I observing? What am I noticing? What am I seeing? What parts are left? Is there any, even a small battle or a small argument that's going on within me? And to have that out, to acknowledge that here, I'm still stuck here. This is a part of me that I really still hate. This is a part of me that's not moving. And that is spiritual self care. Okay. Um, it's so interesting because when you actually start the healing process, A, stuff doesn't bother you. B, you will have wounds and you'll be okay that you have wounds because then you're not covering up anything more and trying to be spiritual. Okay, you're not trying to show that, yes, I'm fine, everything is okay. Yes, yes, I got a divorce and it's all fine. No, I got a divorce, it was hell. But yes, I started the healing process and I'm still healing parts of it, and it's fine. It's completely fine. Okay, it's not a big deal anymore because that's not the only thing in your life. Your life is way bigger than this. There are too many other exciting things in the world to remain stuck with something like this. And you start to see layers, you start to see deeper layers of who you are. In those moments where, think of people in your own life who you have forgiven, events that have occurred for you that you have forgiven. You will know that when you start looking at those people and you start looking at those events through a different set of eyes, a set of healed eyes, you'll either laugh that you went through this, or you will understand why it happened. And you will know that, hey, you'll either be at a place where we all were responsible for it, or you will understand it's just something that happened. It was meant to happen. And you'll know it. It will come from a place of deep knowing and deep acceptance. And that, guys, is spiritual self care. I know that it doesn't sound like a traditional spiritual self care where I'm asking you, get up in the morning, go brush your teeth. That's a part of your spiritual self care. That's not it. It is a way of being. It is how you treat yourself. It is how you treat the fact that you're not really just a human being. You are a spirit here in a body. And that spirit wants to come here and have fun. And you're going to let that happen. You're going to let it run amok and have its experiences. And you came here to experience. And if you're going to hold on tightly to parts of you and judge yourself, that's not allowing spirit to have its fun. When you start to have laughter and you roll with it, you invite more experiences that you can laugh at. And I mean genuine ones. I don't mean just the difficult ones. Okay. But what we are too busy doing is we are judging ourselves because we need to be perfect. Perfect through the eyes of judgment, but understand that you're already perfect through the eyes and the heart of the universe. And you needn't be anything more or less than you are from the point of view of the universe. And that's it. Yeah, know that you are being cradled, you are being taken care of. Your universe is like a parent. It's like an ever loving parent. There isn't anything that's going to be placed in front of you that you can't deal with. Okay. Know that it's okay for you to struggle in it, and it's okay for you to have wounds with it. So, what is the spark of awakening, and why this title? So, spark of awakening is basically simply the shift in perception of how things really are. Like we discussed earlier, it's about being honest. You already do this every day. You have little shifts in the way you see things, in the way you see people, in the way you see events unfolding in your life. When it all happens together and it stays that way, people know that as awakening. But we all have sparks of awakening. And the idea here is the more real and honest you be with you, you invite more of those sparks of awakening. So your job is to have those sparks as often as possible. So, why spiritual self care? Awakening can be a great source of joy, but it can also be a source of difficulty because you watch everything that you're comfortable with melt away. You're left in an unknown zone to make your way through. So, you have a choice. Either you can make it super painful for yourself, or you can make it an amazing adventure where spirit is here to have fun. When structures and people around you start to get transparent, meaning everything starts becoming very, very obvious to you, you will start automatically getting lighter and you will have that sense of total okayness with whatever is going on in your experience. So stop taking stuff so seriously, be kinder to you. You will actually find that stuff starts getting funnier, which used to scare you earlier. And what will start happening is stuff that broke you earlier or tore you apart earlier, if it occurs now, at that moment you may have like a wave of emotion that you might offer in response to it, and then after that everything is just funny, and that's it. Funny in a ridiculous kind of way. It's like, okay, this is crazy, that kind of way. So things never start getting better. You start getting better at how to go through them. And when you allow yourself to have those sparks of awakening within you, where you're acknowledging your truth within, you're acknowledging your reality within, you start to create a strong bond with that spark within you. And whatever feels like it's burning, let those flames kind of burn away what is unreal and fake about you. And that's what's going to happen. So let's take a brief look at what spiritual self care is like. Okay. The first would be the refusal to peg, meaning you refuse to peg, label, box, structure, pin, slot, anything, including people. Instead, you make it fun to see what's really going on, to start to see the deeper layers of things, because they start becoming very visible to you. And you will find that being more aware, sorry, there's a spider. Whoa, big guy. Okay, sorry. You'll start to see that when you start seeing deeper layers of people and deeper layers of events and things, that actually that's more fun for you than doing judgment, because judgment is taking all of your energy and contracting it tightly and fitting things into it and fitting that onto things. A lot of hard work. Here you're just being open awareness, and it's like, oh, that's cool, that's fun, let's see what happens now. You're in that kind of a, how do I call it, very fun space. Yeah. So when that happens, you will see how stuff changes. when it changes and how it doesn't change till then. And we'll be like, okay, it'll change when it changes and it's fine. You know, because it comes from this really deep place of just simply knowing, and it's fine. You have no particular preferences then about how things turn out. You actually start to make peace with every possible outcome. And that is when real and true gratitude seeps in. One, the gratitude where there are no words. So that becomes the state of being. Like I explained earlier about compassion and kindness, and then gratitude now. So it's a state of being. Be obstinate, be goddamn stubborn, and absolutely refuse to judge. So be that. Okay. The second is loss of identity. You don't see yourself belonging to anything in particular. You are like a happy floater. You belong in all groups or you belong to none. And therefore, you don't get defined by where you belong, because you know that your sense of belonging comes from the spark within you. It's within you. You belong to that which is like much greater and that goes beyond everything. You have that connect, you're plugged in, and then you don't have this need to belong and need to be approved and accepted and loved by everybody. You're a fine floater. So I floater is a word that I tend to use, like I'm a floater, it's fine. And sometimes I do feel I need to belong, like I do belong to a healing community, or I do belong to a therapist community, I do belong to an entrepreneurial community or an artist community. I do that, but never from a point of that I have to adhere to the rules of that. It's more that I have that energy within me, and that's really it. Okay. So look at where you're creating stickiness and you're creating strings of control where that is still controlling you. And we're going to talk a little bit about control now. So when you stop calling yourself self-abusive names, that I am such and such a person, and I belong to this, and by the rules of this group that I belong to, I cannot be a certain way. That's so stifling. That's not spiritual self-care. That's spiritual self-abuse. Okay. Now, next one is a shift in scene. So earlier, probably where you didn't like what someone said or did and how they were, and now you see deeper layers of them and you're okay with it, and they seem to you perfect how they are. And even if it is something that you personally don't prefer or like, you'll find that it doesn't matter to you, because they're being who they're being. They're being their beautiful self, how they're meant to be, with all their crap. And that crap is beautiful to you too. It's fine, You needn't change anything because they have that stuff that works for them. It doesn't work for you. If you had a choice, you wouldn't be that way. But you can totally see why they're being that way. And it's fine. This goes beyond forgiveness. This is true seeing. And if you're willing to suspend judgment with yourself for a minute a day, you'll be willing to suspend judgment for a minute with other people too. And then the real scene begins. And this is a very big part of spiritual self care. The next point, like we spoke earlier about, is lightening up, meaning that getting lighter, very little stuff starts to be serious. Even death is not so serious anymore. Things start to weigh less for you. You become a lighter being. You definitely laugh a lot more. You move on quickly. You shrug things off. And you have this complete faith and trust in your own sense of expansion, evolution, and you know that you can move ahead easily, that you can get past this. You have that trust. And so you're even willing to take on things that you probably wouldn't have taken on earlier because you were scared that you would fall apart. Now you know that you can't fall apart, that even if it does, it'll be momentary and you'll be fine after that. And you'll see it as normal. Okay. And all of that really comes if you're willing to laugh a lot more. So hang on a second. Okay. Not willing to be controlled or not willing to control. You start to become unpredictable and you are not in the control of others anymore. You know that your happiness doesn't lie in fulfilling others' expectations of you, but you would love to do things for people now because you love them and not because it's expected out of you. You aren't also interested then in controlling anybody else. So there's no control either ways. It's such a more relaxed way of being. And you also become very highly aware of what games are being played with you by whom. And it's amusing to watch. And then you play them too, but you're very aware that you do play them because you do need to play them with some people at some times, and it's fine. You'll also feel insane. You may get called insane a lot, and in what matter? And we've spoken about this. Okay, you start to become more of a what I call an experience junkie than a money material hoarder. Um, and when things start to go out of your life and you so-called lose stuff or things fall apart, at the most you'll do is you shrug your shoulders and you may twitch your nose for a moment, and then it won't. Then that's it. There will be nothing really after that. There will be no more reaction or response really offered. And that all is a part of spiritual self-care, because you, that being, are willing to be that strong, real, and present that nothing really phases you that much. Another very important part of spiritual self-care is silence and solitude. They become your best friends. They are your go-to place to recharge and just be. Just choosing maybe a couple of spots at home, or getting out to nature, reconnecting with the earth, being with an animal or a bunch of them, nurturing plants, gardening, any outdoor sport which connects you to the sea or the sky. Like for example, I do paragliding, so paragliding really connects me to the sky. I have wanted to be a pilot since I was a kid. So when I'm up there, it's beautiful. It's meditation for me. Or when I'm in the pool, swimming, it's you're immersed in an element, or simply sitting in meditation, or even sitting at a cafe and watching the world go by. I mean, all of this is silence and solitude, which connects you to something much bigger than yourself. Spending time alone is important because it recharges your batteries. Silence is a huge part of spiritual self care. Your silence turns the energy inwards. You're not expending energy out into the world through your seeing, through your words, but you're taking everything in and you're retaining that energy within. And what happens is when you start to retain that energy within, you start to see deeper layers of yourself, and you start to understand that there is no need to react to anything. Reacting to anything is a choice. Okay. And the next one is the feeling of pronoia. Pronoia is the opposite of paranoia. Pronoia is the feeling that the universe is conspiring for you. Pronoia is spelled as Pronoia, where you imagine that, or you get a sense that the universe is doing things for you. And you will start to feel that way, that, hey, everything the universe does is for me. This is for me. That is for me. And that is one of the very important stages to get to, because when you get to that point, then you can actually start to go beyond it. So you'll understand that, because as long as you're in judgment, you're not doing spiritual self care, and you will not invite the feeling of paranoia. Okay. Spiritual bypassing is a very, very important topic, but it's very short. Spiritual bypassing is a form of abuse, it's a form of self abuse. Um, it is where we have preconceived notions and spiritual judgments of what it means to be spiritual. A lot of people have illusions about what spiritualism is. And like, for example, it could be, it's bad to be angry if you're spiritual, like we spoke about earlier. Okay, you shouldn't be jealous because you're on the path, and whatever it is. I do agree to a certain point, because if it is going to damage you, then you shouldn't be that way. But you can't naturally dictate to somebody not to be that way if they have a tendency to be that way. If boundaries are being crossed constantly, then you are going to get angry, and you're fully justified in getting angry. And then you do want to throw that vase at that person, and you should throw that vase at the person. Please miss them, throw the vase somewhere near them, but throw the vase and be okay with it, and tell them, listen, I'm really pissed off right now. I really want to throw this vase at you. Threaten, let them know, and it's fine. It's completely fine. It's not unspiritual if you do that. Okay. No band-aids, no sweeping under the rug and trying to appear zen on the surface. Doesn't work, guys, because ultimately what's going to happen is you may be zen on the outside, but you'll be fighting massive battles within, and that is abuse. Okay. It is the ultimate in self-delusion, spiritual bypassing. And you may wear the right clothes and wear the beads and do the mala jap and attend satsangs and all of that. But if you're not going to be real about who you are, then you will tend to do spiritual bypassing. It is almost an illness, like I said. Spiritual bypassing is more about the rightness of the spiritual path than the realness of you and your life. So please understand what it does to you. There are books about it. There is a book by, I forgot his name. I think Robert Augustus Masters. or somebody else. I can't remember exactly. But the name of the book is called Spiritual Bypassing. And if you like it, you must read it. Yeah, that's that. And a short, quick 7 points about how you can have more ways to spiritual self care. Like I said, spend some more time alone. First one, silence and solitude, at least once a week, if not once a month. Two, acts of kindness and compassion will create space for more of these qualities. And try and do acts of kindness and compassion for you first and then for others. Three, quit judgment. It's the biggest addiction in the world that we all have. Three, connect with your true purpose. And true purpose doesn't mean what are you meant to do in your life, but who are you meant to be in your life? What's the essence of who you are as a person? What are you naturally amazing, with? And start to spread that stuff all around the world, because when you do that, it'll grow within you. Five, honor your creativity and the creative process, because everything creative, anything creative that you do is about creating a space within you that invites the universe to work through you. All right, so invite that. Number six, be judicious and smart about how you use your energy, how you spend your energy, who you spend it with, and how it balances you out. Are you flowing out more energy into life? And are you receiving very little? So please keep doing checks and balances. And the seventh one is create an intention before you do anything. Even if you're receiving a call from somebody, take a look at the phone. This is the person who's calling. Do you want to take this call right now? What is the sense that you get the person is going to say? Get quick awareness. Awareness is very, very fast. It's lightning quick. It's much faster than your mind. Okay. So you won't be wasting even a split second when you create an intention. So be clear with your intention, with yourself, with others, communicate that with others, and boundaries, people, boundaries. Okay. So with that, we come to the end of the content. I'm very happy to take questions now. I have a couple of questions that are there from people, and I'm just going to go to that page where there are questions. Um, and while I'm taking questions from people who have sent them in, I'd be very happy to hear from questions from you. So give me a couple of minutes. So Shilpa from Hyderabad, why are we so serious all the time? She messaged this to me, and then the rest of the question was sent this morning. How does one transition from seriousness to laughter? This is a big one, guys, because we've all been taught to take life seriously, like I mentioned before, and it's also expected out of you. It was drummed into you as a kid, as an adult, as a teenager, and we never really bothered to check internally if that way of being really works for us. If it does, it's fine, but if it stifles you and suffocates you, then lighten up. That's not a big deal. And what are you finding so serious about life? I mean, how many times did you actually want to laugh out loud because a situation kept twisting and turning and twisting and turning, and there was this another plot twist in your life story that you were just like, oh my God, this has changed 100 times. I can't do this anymore. I can't be serious. It's funny now, and then you start laughing. So think of those moments. So maybe move up the laughter a little bit earlier instead of waiting for so long to laugh. And, you know, how many times have you also wanted to laugh in a serious situation, like when I did at my divorce, or perhaps when you just heard that somebody died in the most weird way and you were like, how does one die like that? And you want to laugh, but it's highly inappropriate and it's fine. you know Understand that the universe does have a sense of humor, and the universe wants you to get that sense of humor, because that's when you start really having fun. Otherwise it's going to be like, my life dead and dull, and you're dead, it's over. I mean, there's nothing left to do you know but if you can't laugh out in public, then go home and laugh in private, or laugh with another person who's as weird as you and laughs at the same thing. So please, but just laugh, okay, for God's sake. Then Rupa from Bangalore has asked the question, how do I let go of negative emotions popping up in a relationship? Okay. This doesn't really have anything to do with spiritual self-care, but I'll answer this. First of all, Rupa, how important is this relationship for you? And secondly, any relationship other than the one that you have with yourself is not worth holding on to any kind of negative emotion. You will hold on to any kind of negative emotion if you feel that you have enough proof that holding on to it works for you. But when you understand that holding on to any negative emotion absolutely doesn't serve you in other way, and there is no proof that holding on to it is going to give you anything, that's when you will start to release it. Understand that we release a thought process only when we have enough proof that the other side is true. As long as you believe that this side is true, you will hold on to it. That's how the mind works. So use that, use this understanding, and start to see what are you really holding on to it for from a realistic point of view. And then ask yourself the question, what's worth more, holding on to that emotion or peace? Choice is ultimately yours. Okay. All right, so those are questions that I got sent in. Hey, I can see a few of you on the video. And I've got some question. Seriously, we are so giggly actually. Oh yes, you bet. We all are little kids within, and we actually want to laugh out loud. But then the universe and the world has decided that we're so damn serious that you have to be like, even when you're meditating, you have to be like very sullen, Buddha-like. There's so many times when I'm meditating, I just go into fits of giggles, and it's fine. Then I stop. It's okay. Be chill, chill. Seriously. Okay, so someone has asked me a question. How long did it take for you to walk past the trauma of being separated, especially when someone else was given your place? How long, as in like time as a structure? Is that what you're asking? Hmm, I would say, I think a year and a half to two. That's when I completely felt that it didn't hurt me or affect me anymore, as in that thing didn't hit me anymore. But going further, I had to still process a lot of parts of me which got triggered, which came up during that time. And I think that took a longer time to resolve. So I would say that from 2017 to probably last year. So yeah, I would say that full and complete recovery would be 3 to 4 years. I'm also a health coach, and I have specialized in something called eating psychology. Eating food is again one of the biggest addictions in the world, and yeah, um, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we screw our bodies, our minds with eating food. How we've made food something that it is not. All right. So I will catch you guys next Saturday at 10 a.m. Have a lovely weekend and an even better week. Okay, guys.
Thank you,
See you.
Aditi.
Welcome. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.